It's June 25th, 2026, and today, June 25th, is the anniversary of the day that Jack Kerouac first went up onto Desolation Peak to begin his training. Irwin and Simon and I accidentally wound up in a charming afternoon at Lake Chocomilco, the floating gardens of paradise, I'd say. A group of Mexicans from the park took us there. First, we lunched on turkey mole at the waterside booth. Turkey mole is seasoned chocolate sauce over turkey. Very good. But the proprietor was also selling raw pulque, unrefined mezcal, and I got drunk. But there's no better place in the world to get drunk than the floating gardens. Naturally, we hired a barge and got pulled down dreamy canals full of floating flowers and whole little islands moving around. Other barges floated past us, pulled by the same grave ferrymen with whole families celebrating weddings aboard. So as I sat there cross-legged with the pulque at my shoes, suddenly a floating heaven music came and went at my side, complete with pretty girls, children, and old handlebar mustaches. Then women in low kayak boats rowed up to sell flowers. You could hardly see the boat for all the flowers. There were areas of dreamy reeds where the women paused to rearrange bouquets. All kinds of mariachi bands passed north and south, mingling several tunes at once in the soft, sunny air. The boat itself felt like a lotus. When you pull a boat, there's smoothness you don't get with oars or motors. I was smashed drunk on the pulque, as I say, unrefined juice of the cactus, like green milk, awful, a penny a glass. But I waved at passing families. For the most part, I sat in ecstasy, feeling I was in some Buddha land of flowers and song. Chocomilco is what's left of the lake that was filled over to build Mexico City on. You could imagine what it was in Aztec times, the barges of courtesans and priests in the moonlight. At dusk that day, we played piggyback in the yard of a nearby church, tug of war. With Simon on my back, we managed to topple over Pancho, who carried Irwin. On the way back, we watched the fireworks of November 16th at the Zocalo. When the Mexicans have fireworks, everybody stands there yelling, "Ooh!" being showered finally by huge pieces of falling fire. It's insane. It's like war. Nobody cares. I saw a flaming wheel pirouetting down right on the crowd across the square. Men rushed away, pushing baby carriage to safety. The Mexicans kept lighting madder and bigger stationary affairs that roared and hissed and exploded all over. Finally, they sent up a barrage of final boom booms that were beautiful, ending with the great God finale bomb, plow, and everybody goes home. Arriving at my room on the roof after all these frantic days, I'd go to bed with a sigh. When they leave, I'll get back on the beam again. Quiet cocos at midnight, long sleeps, yet also I couldn't imagine what I was going to do anymore anyway. Irwin sensed it, has always directed me in some ways, said, "Jack, you've had all your peace in Mexico and on the mountain. Why don't you come to New York with us now? Everybody's waiting for you. Your book will be published eventually, within a year even. You can see Julian again, get a pad or a room in the Y or anything. It's time for you to make it," he yelled. "After all, make what? Get published, meet everybody, make money, become a big international traveling author, sign autographs for old ladies from Ozone Park. How you going to New York? We'll simply check the paper for share the car rides. There's one in the paper today. Maybe we can even go through New Orleans. Who wants to see that dreary old New Orleans?" "Oh, you're a fool. I've never seen New Orleans," he said. "I want to see it." "So you can tell people you saw it?" "Never mind all that." "Ah, Jack," tenderly putting his head against mine. Poor Jackie, tortured Jackie, all bugged and alone in an old maid cell. "Come with us to New York and visit museums. We'll even go back and walk over the Columbia campus and tweak old Schnapp in the ear. We'll present Van Doren with our plans for New World literature. We'll camp on Trilling's doorstep until he gives us back that quarter." Talking about college professors. "All that literary stuff is just a drag." "Yes, but it's also interesting in itself, a big charming camp we can dig. Where's your old Dostoevsky curiosity? You've become so whiny. You're coming on like an old sick junkie sitting in a room in nowhere. It's time for you to wear berets and suddenly amaze everybody who's forgotten you're a big international author, even celebrity. We can do anything we want," he yelled. "Make movies, go to Paris, buy islands, anything." Raphael. "Yes, but Raphael doesn't moan like you. He's lost his way. He's found his way. Imagine now he'll be hosted in Washington and meet senators at cocktail parties. It's time for the poets to influence American civilization." Garden, like a contemporary American novelist who claimed he was a two-fisted left-wing hipster leader and hired out of Carnegie Hall to announce such, in fact, like certain Harvard scholars in high places. Was a scholar interested in politics eventually, though he made his mystic point about visions of eternity he'd seen. Irwin, if you'd really seen a vision of eternity, you wouldn't care about influencing American civilization. But that's just the point. It's where I at least have some authority to speak instead of just stale ideas and sociological hang-ups out of handbooks. I have a Blakean message for the Iron Hound of America. Whoopee, and what do you do next? I become a big, dignified poet people listen to. I spend quiet evenings with my friends in my smoking jacket. Perhaps I go out and buy everything I want in the supermarket. I have a voice in the supermarket. Okay? And you can come and have your publications arranged at once. Those incompetents are stalling out of just stupid confusion. Road is a big mad book that will change America. They can even make money with it. You'll be dancing naked on your fan mail. You can look Boisvert in the eye. Big Faulkners and Hemingways will grow thoughtful thinking of you. It's time. See? He stood holding his arms out like a symphony conductor. His eyes were fixed on me, hypnotically mad. Once he'd said to me seriously on pot, I want you to listen to my speeches like across Red Square. The Lamb of America will be raised. How can the East have any respect for a country that has no prophetic poets? The Lamb must be raised. Big trembling Oklahomas need poetry and nakedness. Airplanes must fly for a reason from one gentle heart to an open heart. Namby-pamby dilly-dalliers in offices have to have somebody give them a rose. Wheat's got to be sent to India. New, hip, classical doll scenes can take place in bus stations, or in the Port Authority, or the 7th Avenue toilet, or in Mrs. Rocco's parlor in East Bend or something. Shaking his shoulder with his old New York hipster hunch, the neck convulsive. Well, maybe I'll go with you. You might even get yourself a girlfriend in New York like you used to do, DeLuos. The trouble with you is you haven't a girl in years. Why do you think that? You have grimy black hands that shouldn't go on the white shiny flesh of chicks? They all want to be loved. They're all human trembling souls, scared of you because you glare at them, because you're afraid of them. That's right, Jack, pipes in Simon. Got to give those girls a little workout, boy. Sonny boy, hey, Sonny boy. Coming over and rocking my knees. Is Lazarus going with us, I asked. Sure. Lazarus can take big long walks up 2nd Avenue and look at the pumpernickel breads or help old men into the library. You can read papers upside down in the Empire State Building, says Simon, still laughing. I can gather firewood on the river, says Lazarus from his bed with the sheet up to his chin. What? We all turned to hear him again. He hasn't spoken in 24 hours. I can gather firewood on the river, he concludes, closing down the word river as though it was a pronouncement that none of us need discuss anymore. But he repeats it one last time. On the river, firewood, he adds. And suddenly there he is, giving me that humorous side glance, meaning he's just pulling all our legs but won't say it so. Part 2, passing through New York. It was a horrible trip. We contacted, that is, Irwin contacted in a perfect business-like efficient way, this Italian from New York who was a language teacher in Mexico but looked exactly like a Las Vegas gambler. A Mott Street hood. In fact, I wondered what he was doing in Mexico. Really, he had an ad in the paper, a car, a Puerto Rican passenger already contracted, and the rest of us could fit all around with all the shebang's baggage on the roof of the car. 3 in front and 3 in back, knee to knee in horror for 3,000 miles. But no other way. The morning we left, I forgot to mention that Gaines had been sick several times and sent us downtown on junk errands that were difficult and dangerous. Gaines was sick the morning we left, but we tried to rush away without being noticed. Actually, of course, I wanted to go in and say goodbye to him, but the car was waiting, and there was no doubt he wanted me to go downtown with his morphine. He was short again. We could hear him coughing as we passed the street window with the sad pink drape. 8 o'clock in the a.m. I couldn't resist just sticking my head against the hole in the window saying, "Hey, Bull, we're going now. I'll see ya. When I come back, I'll be back soon." "No, no," he cried in the trembling, sick voice he had when he tried to convert his addiction withdrawal pain to barbiturate torpor, which left him a mess of tangled bathrobes and sheets and spilled piss. "No, I want you to go down. Do something for me. It won't take long." Irwin tried to assuage him through the window, but Gaines started crying. "An old man like me, you shouldn't leave me alone. Not like this, especially not when I'm sick and can't raise my hand to find my cigarettes." "But you're all right before Jack and I got here. You'll be all right again." No, call Jack. Don't leave me like this. Don't you remember all the old days we had together and the times I fixed you up with those pawn tickets and laid money on you? If you leave me like this morning, I'm going to die," he cried. We couldn't see him, just hear him from his pillow. Irwin called Simon to yell something at Gaines, and together we actually ran away in shame and miserable horror. With our luggage down the street, Simon looked at us white-faced. We swirled around the sidewalk in confusion, but the cab we'd already hailed was waiting, and the natural cowardly thing to do was just pile right in and head for New York. Simon came after, jumping in. It was a whoo of relief. But I never knew how Gaines got out of that particular day's sickness, but he did. But you'll see what happened later. The driver was Norman. When we were all seated in Norman's car, he said the Springs would bust before New York or even before Texas. 6 men in a pile of bags and rucksacks on the roof tied all around with rope, a miserable American scene again. So Norman started the motor, raced it, and like those dynamite trucks in movies about South America, he started rolling at 1 mile per hour. Then 2, then 5, as we all held our breath, of course. But he got her going to 20, then 30, then out on the highway to 40 and 50, and we suddenly all realized it was just a long car ride, and we'd just breeze on highways in a good old American machine. So we settled down to the trip, beginning with the rolling of joints of pot, to which the young Puerto Rican passenger, Tony, didn't object. He was on his way to Harlem. Strangest of all, suddenly this big gangster Norman starts singing arias in a piercing tenor voice as he drives along, the which goes on all the way all night to Monterey. Irwin joins him from beside me in the back singing arias I never knew he knew, or singing the notes of Bach's toccata and fugue. I'm so befogged by all these years of traveling and suffering sadness I almost forget to realize Irwin and I used to listen to Bach's toccata and fugue with earphones in the Columbia Library. Lazarus sits in front, and the Puerto Rican gets interested in interviewing him. Finally, so does Norman, realizing what a weird kid he is. By the time we get to New York, 3 days and nights later, he is sternly advising Lazarus to exercise a lot, drink milk, walk straight, and join the army. But at first, there's hostility in the car. Norman comes on rough with us, thinking we're a bunch of faggy poets as we hit the mountains at Zimapan. We're all high and suspicious anyway on tea, but he makes it worse. Now, y'all have to consider me the captain and absolute master of this ship. You just can't sit there and let me do all the work. Cooperate. When we come to a left curve, we all together sing and lean to the left. And vice versa in the right coives. You got that? At first I laughed, thinking it's funny. Also very practical for the tires, as he explained. But no sooner we hit the first mountain curve, and we, the boys, lean over. Norman and Tony ain't even leaning over at all, but just laughing. Now the right, says Norman. Again, the same silly thing. Hey, how come you ain't leaning? I yell. I got my driving to think about. Now you boys just do what I say and everything will be fine and we'll get to New York. A little peevish now that someone had spoken out. I was scared of him at first in my pot paranoia. I suspected he and Tony were crooks who would just hold us up en route for whatever we had, which wasn't much though. As we went along and he grew more annoying, it was Irwin, who never fights, finally saying, "Oh, shut up," and all the car was cool thereon.